Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mavens of Data. We've got a great show for you today. We are going to be talking about how you can accelerate your career via personal branding and specializing in data. We've got an amazing guest here in Jess Ramos. Jess, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you say hi to the audience, give them a little bit of your background if anybody doesn't know who you are already?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Jess Ramos, so really awesome to have so many people here already today. I am a senior data analyst at Crunchbase. I've been kind of in the tech, software as a service, product world for pretty much my entire career. It's where I've really found my home working in data. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor, so go take my courses there. And I'm also the founder of Big Data Energy Analytics, which is my social media side gig. I create social media content on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, my newsletter, and a little bit on YouTube. So honestly, you can't really miss me anywhere. I will find you on all the social media algorithms. And I really have just been working on like my own courses and lots of exciting things for the future. So definitely follow along for more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. You sound lazy. I don't know why you're not more busy. You're not doing anything. It's a little disappointing, but what can you do?
I know. I just started playing pickleball too, as if I need another hobby.
Amazing. I've seen people play in town. I haven't played myself, but it looks like a lot of fun. Let's get into the main portion of the show. We're going to talk about specialization and personal branding, two things that have been really good for Jess's career. Jess, let's kind of jump into that first. I'd love to kind of talk about your career a little bit. And were there any sort of like pivotal moments when things really took off, maybe because of building a personal brand or potentially specializing into one or two skills within data?
Yeah, I would say things really took off for me at the first startup I started working in. I had the most career growth there. And I think part of the reason was because it was a smaller startup. So I was able to get my hands onto everything. I was working so much directly with leadership, so many stakeholders, and I had so much responsibility. Like looking back, it's actually terrifying because I was a little tiny baby data analyst who could like barely write a SQL query, and I'm directing like the execs on what I think we should do and making all these reports. And it forced me so much out of my comfort zone. Like I remember being so nervous presenting my first report to the entire company and just putting together all these analyses that had so much weight and importance. But it really just set the stage for me to learn a ton. And without that big foundation of the skills, I don't think I would have had the success that I've had thus far in my career, because those skills are what helped me jump to my next job and then finally jump to Crunchbase where I am now. So I would say working at a smaller startup, getting my hands on a lot of things. And then of course, while I was there, I was able to negotiate 2 promotions and really just increase my salary a lot and my title.
Awesome. The startup, that wasn't your first job, right? You had an analyst job at a bigger company before that. Is that right?
So that was my first full-time data analyst job and my first, actually not my first internship, because I did have an internship in undergrad for about a year on campus. Mm-hmm. So that was like my first data experience, and I learned a ton there. And that's what really helped me get into grad school and then land that, I guess, like first like real internship off a college campus while I was in grad school. And then from there, they hired me full time, promoted twice, and then 2 job switches later.
Awesome. I mean, okay, yeah, so interesting. So like I often think of it as like same advice. I love being part of startups. I think that's where I've seen my biggest growth personally, and it's for the same reason. It's at a startup, there's no like, oh, she's not 20 years in, so we can't give her this responsibility. They're like, oh my gosh, we got to get this thing done. Where's a body? Jess seems smart. Throw her at it. It's like, it's a totally different mentality in terms of the responsibility they'd give you. I got into startups maybe like 5 years into my career. And so I was at big companies initially. I think you're one of the first people I've talked to that went straight into a startup, basically. it's kind of a scary proposition to sort of have to learn at that point. So it's awesome you were able to kind of ride that dragon and make it work. It's really cool. Awesome. How about in terms of specialization? I know that's one of the things you wanted to talk about a lot. Like, at what point did you start thinking about specializing versus like being a generalist? And how much do you think of yourself as like really specialized versus having a broader set of skills?
Yeah, I don't think I meant to specialize necessarily, but working at that startup for so long, I realized through my next job search that I did have a little bit of specialization in my skills. The first one is SQL. I definitely make a lot of content on SQL. It's my favorite language to code in. So yeah, I got really good at SQL there. We also had a very startup-y kind of database. You know, everything is named inconsistently, spelt wrong. You have tables built out over here and then built out over here. Like, it was not an optimal database and data model by any means. So it forced me to actually get really good at SQL. Like, I had to learn how to wrangle it, you know, in the way I needed it, pull in data from all these random places, deal with the inconsistencies and data cleaning that you wouldn't have to do if you had things kind of streamlined and set up properly. So I think that forced me to specialize in SQL. And then I also realized I had a specialization through my business domain, my business acumen. So that company was a smaller, like, fintech mortgage startup, which is like very niche down. But I realized having that fintech experience was so valuable. So when I started interviewing, which I hadn't done for a few years at that point, I was realizing that I needed to say the right buzzwords in interviews. Like, oh, I work in a software as a service startup, because if you have that specialization and you understand how that one industry and business works, that's the type of things that recruiters and hiring managers want to hear. Because if you're applying for a super chaotic, fast-moving software as a service startup and you've only worked at big companies in healthcare, or, you know, something totally unrelated, it might not mean as much to them as someone who has that business experience. So throughout, you know, my whole career, moving jobs, whatever, I still consider myself to be pretty specialized in SQL as a tool, and then fintech, heavy on the tech, software as a service startups.
Awesome. Yeah, that domain knowledge is something that it's so important, and it can be such an advantage. And people don't talk about it as much as they talk about the technical skills. But, you know, like, when picture a hiring manager, say I'm trying to hire an analyst for pick whatever role. I'm not really trying to hire an analyst. I'm trying to hire either a marketing analyst or a financial, you know, like, I'm trying to get somebody to do analytics work in a specific setting. And so if you can showcase those, that set of domain knowledge, that's really fantastic. I'm curious. So after you sort of specialized in SQL, after doing that, how do you think that's changed your career trajectory? Like, when you're looking for new jobs, does the SQL come up often? Is it sort of a rare niche thing? Like, how critical is SQL, you think, in our general data world?
Yeah, I mean, I would say SQL is definitely not a rare niche thing, because most data jobs are probably going to use some sort of SQL. And now that I think about it, maybe most don't, because I'm very, like, you know, in tech, and like we use SQL a lot in tech, but I know there's plenty of other industries out there like finance, healthcare, you know, they do a lot more Excel work, maybe SAS, R. So I guess, like, in my world in tech, it is like kind of everywhere. But I think SQL is something that you should always know in a data job, because it's going to be used in a lot of different industries, but it's not like super specialized to where it's limited me.
Yeah. Yeah. I found the same thing. I think it's one of the most common skills that comes up. And the other one that, like you mentioned, Excel, that kind of comes up everywhere, almost in literally every single job. And I think the big difference that I've personally found is, and I started as like an Excel jockey, eventually learned SQL. Everybody kind of fancies themselves pretty good with Excel, or at least, you know, if you call yourself a data person or even like a quasi data person, there's a lot of people. The universe of folks who are good at Excel is very large. And then for whatever reason, people seem to be intimidated by learning SQL. They think, oh, it's code, it's not for me. So it knocks out a lot of people. So the universe of people who are good at SQL is a lot smaller, but every company has a need for it almost. So yeah, I think it's got to be near the top of the list, if not at the very top, for skills that'll make you sort of rare and valuable. So that's great that one has really popped for you. Jess, how about if people are looking to learn, let's say SQL, because we're on that, what do you think are some great ways that folks can learn SQL? You mentioned you've got courses. Do any of those cover SQL?
Yeah, so my intermediate SQL course is on LinkedIn Learning right now. I really recommend it for people who have like at least a basic SQL level and want to like practice on real business problems. I think a problem with a lot of courses is that a lot of them just kind of have you writing these random queries, answering these random questions, but they don't really tie in like the business problems, the business acumen, what it's like to work back and forth with stakeholders. So I throw in a little bit of that into the course. And I also may have some things cooking up for the future. So definitely stay tuned. But some other courses I really recommend. I recommend Sadie St. Lawrence's course on Coursera. I think she has a great course. And ultimately, just practicing on your own. Once you get that basic foundation, actually jump into a data set and practice by yourself. And if you get kind of stuck or you don't know how to do something, like it's totally fine to Google, use ChatGPT, ask it to debug your code for you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be Googling all the time, figuring things out yourself on the job. So it's good to kind of take the training wheels off and see what happens.
Yeah, I literally Googled how to do something today in SQL that I have taught in a course before. So like Google is a big part of the job, or ChatGPT now, depending kind of however you prefer to look stuff up these days. What advice would you give to somebody who's saying like, I don't really have a great personal brand. I know I need a lot of work on it. What advice would you give to a person like that?
Yeah, I would say I was in the exact same place 2 years ago. I had no personal brand and like I had no followers, and I wouldn't think that I would ever be where I am today. So I would definitely say like just go for it. I think a common misconception is that people think they have to be an influencer. Like your goal doesn't have to be to grow a bunch of followers and start a business and, work with all these brands. Like you don't have to do any of that. If you want to do that, I say go for it, because I didn't think I would get to where I am. So don't let like the imposter syndrome keep you out from trying that. But you don't have to have followers or be an influencer to have a personal brand. And basically when you make a personal brand, you want to think of like the main pillars, like the 3 things that you want to be known for. For me, I would say it's kind of changed over time based on my social media goals, based on my career and how I'm going through my career. But I say right now, mine are kind of data analytics, maybe niche down a little bit into SQL too, remote work, and also maybe like work culture too. I've kind of gotten more into like the lifestyle side of tech too. So think about the main things that you want to be known for, especially if you're job searching. It's really good to just get your name and your face out there. So that way, when you're applying for jobs, people might be like, oh, I think I've seen this person's content on LinkedIn. I connected with this person 3 months ago. I've been following their posts, or they've been showing up in my comments. Just having like a familiar face and name can help a lot. And then of course, when people are looking to hire you, the first thing they're going to do is go look up your LinkedIn. And I honestly think LinkedIn is just as important as a resume nowadays. Make sure you have pinned projects. Maybe you went to a networking event or conference or community stuff. Just being well connected and looking like an expert can honestly take you so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree. I usually tell people there's basically no chance that you're going to get hired without the manager that you'll end up working for having looked you up on LinkedIn, like virtually 0%, right? So if you know they're going to do that, like you've got to prepare for it, and you have to look good. The worst case would be you have somebody that's like, you look them up and they don't look like a data person. Maybe they're like super negative, super complainy, and you're just like, oh, this person's like not a good fit and seems awful. You know, a little bit better than that would just be they find nothing. But the best possible thing would be, oh man, she's constantly talking about data. I see she's enthusiastic about this. She's sharing these things that she's learning. She's talking and helping other people and getting active. Like, this is somebody who's really fired up about this. That's a huge advantage over somebody else, you know, people in those other two categories, you know. So, and I think, Jess, you made a really good point. I think people think to be active, you have to have this like influencer profile, but I've seen tons of people that don't, that are more of like a learner profile, and they're putting themselves out there when they're like, hey, I just picked up Power BI for the first time and I made my first dashboard, check it out. So I think, you know, you don't have to be this 200,000 follower person on LinkedIn that Jess is today. You can be where she started. And I'm curious if you could go kind of back in time and think about that, like the first LinkedIn post you made, Jess. Do you remember, or like one of the first couple, do you remember what those were about to try to show people what it was like?
Yeah, I do. My first post, it was like a random Sunday night in April of 2022. I posted it from my phone at like 10:30 p.m., laying in my bed. It was just, I was like, I think I was sitting there thinking kind of like sentimentally, what's the word?
Yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah, okay. And I was like, wow, I'm so glad I don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn and rush to the office on a Monday morning. So I wrote this post about remote work and how 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. has become like my power hours of the day. Like back then I used that time for like, you know, doing chores, getting my house together, getting ready for the day. Now I use it for content. So my priorities have shifted since then. But that first post just went viral. I remember the next morning I woke up with hundreds of likes and I was like, what? Why are people liking my post? And then I went to a meeting and came out and I had like over 1,000 likes and LinkedIn commented on my post. And I was like, what is going on here? So I remember all my coworkers were like, oh my gosh, Jess, like you're famous. And I was like, no, like I'm a one-hit wonder. No one cares what I'm going to have to say. I'm probably not going to post again. The second post, I went for it. I posted again, like on my phone. I don't know what my deal was with these like quick phone posts, but it was, I think 10 things to like improve your SQL skills or something like that. And that one performed really well too. And then I just started making it a habit of posting every weekday. I have barely missed any weekdays in the past 2 years. It takes so much consistency. Yeah. Sometimes it takes posting when I'm sick, posting when I'm tired and don't want to, posting if I'm on vacation, which I'm not saying those are the most like healthy things to do. Take a break if you need it. But that consistency is like compounding over time, and just showing up every day has, you know, gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I hope folks can kind of take that as an example and realize like just try it. It's scary at first, you know, at least for a lot of people. I don't know if it was for you, Jess. Like, were you nervous about posting at the beginning?
I actually wasn't, because I thought that I was posting something into the abyss. Like I truly was like, no one's going to see this. And I'm glad I didn't have that fear holding me back, because if I did have that fear of putting myself out there and having that anxiety, I might have not done it. But I had that fear later on. I was like, okay, I went viral once on accident, kind of. Who's going to care what I have to say? And I just had to like keep putting myself out there and talking about, you know, things that I'm a domain expert in or whatever, what I was learning in my career. And I remember I used to have terrible anxiety every time I posted. I was like, what if I say something stupid? What if something's wrong? What if I have a spelling error and all the haters come after me? And that has happened a few times, you know, like you're going to mess up and maybe make a mistake or say something the wrong way. But my advice is that haters boost your engagement. So just keep being yourself, posting what you're learning, and be authentic, and you're going to find your community and the people who support you. And the people that don't will boost your engagement. So
I think that's great advice. And if you're getting haters, you're probably doing something right, because you're getting enough attention that it's making people you know, jealous or nervous or whatever. But that's great. My similar advice to that I often give people is, because I was really nervous starting on LinkedIn when we started to do it for Maven, and like I'd never really done it before, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this. It feels weird. It feels like it's not me. And I think the most interesting thing that I found that I think has helped people when I share it with them is like, if you make a post that is not really not successful, maybe not the most useful, like the algorithm just doesn't show it to very many people. Nobody really sees it. So it's like your embarrassments are very, very small. And
Very
then
true.
when you do something that's good, that's resonating with people, like Jess talks about with that first post, like that's when you get like 100,000 people see it, and you mostly get comments that are like, hey, thank you, this really helped me. I learned something, or like you gave me the motivation to put in a little extra effort right now, and now I think I can do it. So like generally, the more it gets seen, the more positive it is. And if it doesn't get seen, you're the only one, and maybe your mom, like, that know about it, right? So
So true.
yeah, so hopefully that helps somebody. So Jess, as you started doing this, you talked about consistency being really important. Are there any other tips that you would give folks for like when they're getting started, or maybe as they're trying to develop some traction there, that would help them be successful creating a brand online?
Yeah, I would say definitely think about what you want to be known for. So if you are looking for a job in data and that's kind of where you want to focus your content on, maybe don't treat LinkedIn like Instagram and be posting about, your vacations and what your dog did yesterday. Definitely try to like niche down and make sure you're being known for the things that you do want to be known for. And then also you have to really listen to your audience. Like I've been so lucky that people have like followed me as I've gone through these crazy like, career changes and shifts. I've kind of shifted my content around from strictly data to kind of job searching and interview tips, because at the time I was interviewing and that's what I was learning about and experiencing firsthand. And then now I'm kind of posting about, data, being at a job that you have been at longer than 4 months as opposed to my last job. Kind of developing that domain expertise within a company, and also having the freedom to be able to work remotely and have a flexible schedule. So I've kind of been able to shift my content around, but you have to listen to what your audience wants and see what resonates. And a lot of times I just look at my analytics. I know that LinkedIn has terrible analytics, so it's really hard, but I just sort my posts based on popularity, impressions, or engagement. And I'm like, what has resonated the most in the past year? What has resonated the most in the last 30 to 90 days? And if there's a certain topic that keeps showing up, then I'm like, okay, let me talk about that a little bit more. Maybe my audience wants to learn more about that. So yeah, think about what you want to be known for, and also listen to your audience.
Yeah, love your advice there of following the data, and it is right out there for you. It doesn't have to be this crazy complicated analysis. It's just like, hey, what's getting a lot of traction? What are people engaging with? And that'll tell you there. It's some good blocking and tackling use of data right there. It's awesome. How about, Jess, as you started to build a brand, were there any like inflection points where you felt like you were starting to get job opportunities because of it, and any other things that were happening? Like, did that ever happen for you?
Totally. I mean, once I first started posting, like within my first like few months or so, I noticed a difference in my inbox. I had people like recruiters, people just offering me jobs, wanting to discuss like job opportunities, which, a little disclaimer, this was in 2022. So it was a very different job market. It is not the 2023, 2024 job market. So definitely just posting content just makes you visible. So maybe there's a recruiter out there looking for someone with your exact skills and skill set, and they just happen to find your profile because you're out there posting and showing up in their feed. So I would say even in the beginning, I noticed a huge difference in the visibility I was getting. And then also another inflection point for me was really end of 2023, because I realized that brands were wanting to work with me. And I was like, what? Like, why are people wanting to work with me? This is crazy. I'm just Jess, So now I've gotten to the point where I've actually been able to like monetize off social media and work with all these brands. I've worked with SAP, IBM, Alltrix, Intel. I have another huge brand coming up soon I'm really excited about. So just being able to get like more connected with all these big brands has given me like a source of side income. So I know that if I were to get laid off or, you know, for whatever reason, not have a job, I do have something else to like sustain myself. So I think the financial security is great. And then also the opportunity to work with all these big brands is honestly really cool and flattering. I still can't believe some of these people want to work with me.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I believe it, and I'm glad it keeps happening. I'm sure it will continue to keep happening. You're doing awesome stuff, Jess. Matt, Mike, a new new Maven guy that a lot of you know. I think he has a comment there echoing, you know, nobody remembers a bad post. People only remember the good ones. And I think a lot of times it's like remembering a good teacher that really helped you. Like you might remember it for a really long time. So that's awesome. Good advice there. Let's see. How about, are there any like don't do's, anything that people should avoid, pitfalls if they're starting a personal brand online? Is there any like third rail you don't want to step on?
That is a good question. I think the biggest pitfall is just not doing it.
Yeah.
Like if you're not posting on LinkedIn and getting more connected within, you know, the network of professionals you want to be connected in, I think that is a huge pitfall because there's really nothing you can lose. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're just out there posting free data analytics content and meeting other people, there's really no way to lose there. So I would say just not getting started is probably the biggest pitfall. Of course, too, like once you kind of get going, you have to remember anything you ever post is going to be on the internet forever. That's the reality of the world we live in. So you have to make sure what you do post are things that you're okay with, not just your mom seeing, but also your current employer, your potential future employers. And I don't say that to scare people by any means. The pros definitely outweigh the cons, but you do have to be careful about posting if you're hitting certain topics like, you know, transitioning out of a job into another or wanting to change careers. You do have to be careful with that.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, so probably like be careful managing that you don't look too negative. Be careful, like bad mouthing your company certainly is not a good idea. I remember, I'll give an anecdote from my first analyst job, and luckily it's not me, but it was a good friend of mine who also happened to be my neighbor. And he came over one day after work, and he's like, "Oh man, I messed up," you know. And he showed me this email that he got from all the VPs of our analytics group. Well, it was like the head guy, the EVP, and it had all the other VPs CC'd. And basically, it was telling him, like reprimanding him for he had said something bad on Facebook about one of our largest clients. Like he had a bad experience. He didn't work on the client, but he worked for our company it was one of our like top 2 or 3 clients, a credit card company that you would know the name of. And like that always stuck in my, like, and I was like, yeah, man, I mean, you basically have to get another job. Like you're not getting promoted at this point, you know? So like, don't do that. Hopefully that's a cautionary tale. It certainly has been for me. And I love your advice that probably the biggest pitfall is just not doing it. I think I fell into that for most of the beginning of my career. I didn't even really know it was a thing to do. And I wish I did. I feel like if I had early on, I'd probably have been a lot more successful. You know, if I had a brand, probably would have moved up faster, made greater network and opportunities. So, yeah, I love that advice. So let's, Jess, if you're ready, we can hop into the hot seat, folks. Start throwing some questions in there. So this is from Sufyan. I've heard a data analyst mainly deals with just select statements in MySQL. What are your thoughts on this? I see you're kind of head cocking to the side a little bit already. And then could you order the importance of the tools needed: Power BI, SQL, Excel, and Python? So kind of a multi-part question here.
Love this. Okay, so assuming that this person means only select statements, as in select star from table, I would say that is incorrect. I think like knowing a very basic level of SQL is amazing and a great launching point, but you're likely going to need way more than that unless your company just has the most beautiful database that like exists, which is probably not the case. So I would say definitely learn things beyond that. Definitely learn joins, aggregate functions, group by, filtering data with where, and having. Did I already say having? I don't know, but I'll say it again just in case. And then beyond even just those like basics, you also need to learn how to wrangle data. So using, different things like CTEs, unions, intersect, subqueries, self joins, case statements, all of those things are really useful when it comes to like transforming data from different places and getting it into the shape that you need. So I don't know who told you that, but I'm gonna give it a big fat no. The second part, this is definitely my biased opinion, like as someone who works in the tech industry, but I would say Power BI or data visualization, so Power BI, Tableau, whatever you want to use, is probably number one in the order you should learn it. Because if you don't understand basic data techniques, like how to visualize and interpret data, you're going to have a hard-ish time learning SQL and just jumping straight into coding. Number two, I would say is SQL, because you're going to use SQL on the job most likely a ton. You might even have to do interviews in SQL. And then Excel or Python. I would probably put Excel third, because if you already know SQL, how to pull data, you already know data visualization. Excel, you can just Google as you go, like I wouldn't invest like a crazy amount of time in Excel. And then I put Python actually last, because you're probably not going to use Python a lot unless you get into like a more senior level position or maybe in data science. So I think the order you have it in is actually the order that I would leave it in.
Cool. Awesome answer. And it's one I've heard recently from folks, like that people are really excited about Python, but then really if it's a data analyst job, it can probably come pretty late in your stack and you'll be fine. So yeah, great answer, Jess.
Wait, I have one more thing to say here. Okay, yeah. So I saw a LinkedIn post one time and it was like, if you learn Python, it's a waste of time. And I'm like, no, it's not. Do I think it's the most important skill to learn when you're starting out? No, you should start with like easier things to learn, get that low hanging fruit with the best ROI. But it's definitely not a waste of time, because once you learn one tool or one language, it makes it so much easier to take those concepts and learn it in another one. So if you did start learning Python, keep going with it. Just make sure you're also learning the other things too.
Yep. I think that's right. Yeah, it's definitely got some value. I wouldn't put it first on the list either. Let's check this one out from Grace here. So what are some quick tips you have for getting strong engagement on a LinkedIn post? For example, do you always end with a question? Should you use hashtags? You've asked the right person, Grace. So let's see what Jess says.
Yes. I would say hashtags don't do anything on LinkedIn. Like I have even heard rumors of LinkedIn removing hashtags. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have not used hashtags in over a year. I am actually convinced they do nothing unless I'm disclosing a brand partnership. Then I use a hashtag. But engagement tips, I would say my first tip is post something interesting enough to engage with. If you're not getting great engagement, you might not be posting interesting content. And I know that is like such a hard pill to swallow. I had to go through that myself when I started making Instagram content. I treated it like a personal Instagram. I was like, why am I not growing? I'm not getting engagement. I'm not growing followers. Maybe I'm just built for LinkedIn. Completely wiped and started over my strategy last November and started thinking, what does my audience want to see? How can I make more engaging content? And to be frank, I just made better content. And now, I've grown 80,000 followers. So definitely make sure you're posting content that is actually useful for people and interesting enough to engage with. And the tips I have there, you definitely have to start out with a really strong hook. Try to post something really interesting or shocking in the first line. If you can post like a number or an emotion or just something really interesting, you have to hook people in to read. Mm-hmm. And then I think ending with a question, it can be helpful, but I also think sometimes too, if your content is just like interesting enough to talk about, people are going to talk about it anyways.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love the advice about the hook because, you know, basically a lot of times you hear people have short attention spans. I think they maybe have short attention spans, but I think it's more like a short decision span where they see something from you and they're like, right away, they're like either, yeah, this is interesting, or nah, this guy's boring. I don't want to listen to him, you know, and that's like right away. So that first thing that you give them, it's really important. So I think that's fantastic advice. Awesome. Let's see. So this one's from Ibrahim. Would you advise specializing in a specific domain as a beginner data analyst, or is it better to be a generalist first and then specialize? Ooh, really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's like a black and white answer to it. I think it's better to know things, like a few things deeply than to just learn everything. So I would say it's good to kind of pick maybe 2 tools, definitely SQL, and then Power BI or Tableau, and get really good at those. Because I see people sometimes they're like, I'm learning Python, I'm learning Power BI, Tableau, R, SQL, Google Sheets and Excel. And I'm like, why are you learning all that? You probably only know how to do like the most basic level in each tool. So definitely kind of pick a tool in each category. So like SQL, data visualization, and then maybe like a more programmery language like Python or R if you want to go that way, but don't pick tools that kind of do the exact same thing. Otherwise, you're just focusing your time, you know, learning things in a different tool if you already know how to do it in the other tool.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And, you know, like being like not particularly good at a ton of different things is not really a recipe to get hired and be successful, right? Like you need 1 or 2 hat hangers at least that like you're really good at. It's like the old is it a Bruce Lee quote? I forget if it's Bruce Lee or somebody else, but I think it's Bruce Lee that he said, I don't fear the person who knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the person who's practiced one kick 10,000 times, you know, like they're really good at it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that one. So try to be good at least something before you're trying to do everything. I think makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. I've got one for you just because it was really interesting. You talked about sort of striking out on Instagram and then stopping and then being like, no, I'm going to reassess. Was there anything concrete about like differences between LinkedIn and Instagram, or like that you found that you needed to be successful on Instagram? Because we talk about LinkedIn a lot with folks. We don't talk about Instagram as much, but it's really interesting. You've been able to grow it so well.
Yeah, there's major differences between every social media platform. And I didn't understand that at first. I thought, oh, everybody from LinkedIn is going to follow me over to Instagram. Like everybody loves me. They're just going to follow me there too. I was a clown. Like nobody followed me. So I definitely had to learn and just, you know, swallow that hard pill of it's a totally different environment. People are looking for a totally different type of content. And yes, some of the learnings I had from LinkedIn, like building a niche, starting with a strong hook, building good community, like those things I was able to use on Instagram. But I had to really just learn that it's a completely different platform. And same thing with TikTok too. So yeah, my advice, if you're interested in other platforms, would be to build good community over there, talk to other content creators, kind of see what is working well and maybe why. Like I learned, for example, that like 8-second reels are like the sweet spot on Instagram. Like those shorter reels that just have higher level information, we're doing well. So instead of me rambling about SQL for 60 seconds, which people on LinkedIn love from me, or maybe they don't, I don't know. I had to keep it high level, like 10 tips for SQL, boom, 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 quick value. And now Instagram's moving more towards like 30 to 45 seconds, like more like talking videos. So you just have to kind of stay up with like what your audience likes and also what the social media platforms are prioritizing more.
Cool. I think that's awesome advice. Yeah, we can still do a few more of these here, and then we'll get you out on time, Jess. So this one's from Lucas. What, in your opinion, what are some of the trending topics in data analysis? So like if people wanted to say like they're on the cutting edge, what are some of the trends they should be most aware of? It's a really interesting one.
Yeah, I would say AI, as much as I hate to use like the most like buzzword cookie cutter answer, I think everyone nowadays is thinking, how can AI make my job more efficient?
Yeah.
So in the past, I mean, I say in the past, like 2 years ago, or wait, 1 year ago, we had to use, Stack Overflow way more, and we had to Google things, which is crazy to even think about. But now we're able to get fast results through AI tools. So I use ChatGPT and Gemini all the time. Sometimes it's like, I just need inspiration. I'm like, how would I write a query to track churn or, whatever. And then I just get like a basic, okay, so maybe I make a CTE that kind of does this. And then, this is how I do the calculation. But of course you can't copy and paste from these tools. You have to, verify it's actually doing what you want them to do. But it is really useful for just brainstorming, generating ideas, and even sometimes debugging your code. Sometimes I'm working in Python and I'm like, why is this not doing what this is the most unhelpful error message I've ever received. And then Gemini's like, oh, you missed this bracket here. So it definitely saves me a lot of time that I used to spend, just staring at my code or surfing the web for this exact niche error message.
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome. I was going to ask you a follow-up question of like, what are some of your favorite use cases, but you nailed them right there. So I think that's a great one. Let's go to Amy's question here. So one of Amy's worries creating content is that it might alert their current employer. And I think the assumption here is alert their current employer that they're interested in looking around. What do you think about that in general, that problem?
Yeah, so if your concern is that they might think that you're job searching, I would say you should just be posting anyways, even if your intention is to job search and get, more connected in the industry. But LinkedIn is not just a job search platform anymore. I mean, it used to be a place where you just stored your resume and maybe found jobs, but now it's become more of a community and more social media focused. And I think we're seeing that too more with LinkedIn releasing their video feed and just getting hopefully better at supporting content creators. I'm seeing a lot of huge names come over from Instagram. I mean, heck, we even have Snoop Dogg on LinkedIn these days. So if your employer is concerned that you're job searching, I would just, definitely not make it sound like you're job searching in your posts, and let them know like, hey, LinkedIn is where all the cool people are nowadays. People consume and create content here, So I wouldn't let that hold you back. Just always be careful what you say and make sure there's nothing that can, kind of fall back on you, which is definitely hard. And I've struggled with that too. So.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Let's do one more and then we'll get you out of here. So this is from Eline. Transitioning to an analytics job, do you advise deleting any non-data related posts, maybe posts that you already have? That's an interesting one. What do you think about that, Jess?
I would say no. I mean, I don't know how many posts you have, but nobody is going to go back like super far in your posts. And even if they like do look at your posts, I don't think it's like a negative to be posting about something different. Like, I think it's just part of your story. Like if you go back through all of my LinkedIn posts, you can kind of see how I've shifted around, and depending on what I was learning at that point in my life, my content kind of reflects that. So in a way, I feel like it's a documentation of my career. It's kind of like my diary in a way. I like kind of write it based on what I'm doing at that point in time, or reflecting back on the past too. So I think it's just part of your story. And unless it's something that's like a red flag or something that might make you look badly, I would say just leave it, because no one's probably going to see it anyways.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And I think that last part is also important. If there was something weird or you think might scare a hiring manager, go ahead and take that down. But as long as it doesn't look weird or problematic, red flaggy, it's probably okay.
Yep.
Let me put this on the screen here. So this is just a link to Jess's LinkedIn profile. So folks, check Jess out. Like I said, we're trying to get her to 200,000 followers. I think she's just a hair under there. Amazingly impressive. Tons of folks are turning to her for good content on data every day. And, you know, with that, thank you to everybody in the audience for showing up. And especially, Jess, thank you so much for being a part of this. You did the Mavens of Data before we had this live format. You were one of the original guests. So it's amazing to have you back on here, and just really appreciate everything that you are doing for the data community, and always awesome to chat with you.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I also just posted my newsletter link in the chat, so definitely go follow me there. And we're going to have some big announcements soon. Please follow me so I can hit 200K and pop another bottle of champagne.
Awesome. And we'll include that link and the LinkedIn link in our show notes. And if anybody's listening to this on audio, you can see that in the description. We'll include these links too. So yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Jess. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.